Welcome everyone to today's Business as Unusual webinar series. We'll be getting started in just one moment, so be prepared to hear a lot of great information today on how you can continue to help your business as we move through 2020. Great to see faces. Missy, I hope you enjoy your lunch today. Congrats on being one of the first 5 winners. Welcome, Harv. I hope you're also enjoying lunch. Thanks for being one of our first 5 registrants for today's webinar. Give everyone just one more moment here as I'm still seeing a few more attendees pop in for today's session.
Finland. Wow, cool.
Arto, you'll enjoy my maiden name is Luukkonen with 2 U's and 2 K's. So welcome and thanks for joining us today. We'll go ahead and get started. So again, welcome to today's Business as Unusual webinar series, where we're speaking with industry leaders on how they are surviving and thriving during the year 2020, as well as offering stories of inspiration and innovation. We're very excited to have you on today's session, where we're going to be talking more about how all businesses have really pivoted, but especially FedEx Express. This $36 billion company has really found unique ways and new ways that they're approaching business, especially as all of us have been relying on them even more heavily for our on-time and urgent deliveries. As a few housekeeping pieces today, we do have everyone on mute. So if you'd like to ask a question, please use the chat function or the QA option. They're located at the bottom of your screen. I'll be monitoring those throughout today's session and making sure that Emily responds to your questions at the end. As a note, I am as Red Caffeine today, but my name is Lisa Baining. I'm one of Red Caffeine's account managers, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. I'd like to thank all of you for registering. As we noted in our email, the first 5 registrants today receive free lunch on us as a $20 voucher to help support the restaurants in their local area that have been so hard hit during this 2020 economic climate. We did have 1 order placed so far for the local Jersey Mike subs, and looking forward to seeing what our other registrants select as their lunch option for later today. With that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Kathy Steele, principal and owner of Red Caffeine, who will be our host for today's session, as well as Emily Brown, managing director of global compensation and people support at FedEx Express. So welcome, Kathy. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you, Lisa. Welcome, Emily. I am really excited to have you as our guest today. We met almost 3 years ago at a compensation conference, and I never really thought an HR conference could be so fun, but it was just great to get to know you and maintain our relationship for the past few years. So really happy to have you here. And so I got to, learn more about, your background and career. But I'd love you to, let's just start there. Tell us a little bit about, your education, sort of some things about your work history, and what's gone on at your career at FedEx, because it's a pretty interesting career journey.
All right, absolutely. So, hey, my name is Emily Brown. Like, Kathy and Lisa had said, I'm the managing director of global compensation and people support at FedEx Express. I live in Memphis, Tennessee. It is the headquarters of FedEx. I work for FedEx Express, which is the airline or the airline arm of FedEx. So when you think of FedEx, there's 4 main entities under the entire FedEx umbrella, being FedEx Express, the airline piece of it, FedEx Freight, obviously the trucking piece of it, FedEx Ground, and then FedEx Services, which is a support arm that supports all of the different operating companies. So I got my undergraduate degree from the University of Tennessee in Human Resource Management and International Business. Huge regret in college that I didn't actually go abroad and didn't have that international experience. And so stayed within the state, coming from Memphis, Germantown, Tennessee, and going to Tennessee, but really regretted not getting that global perspective and that international experience. And so after my undergraduate years, I got my master's degree in international business. So I got an International M.B.A, and it was a partnership with the University of Memphis and a university in Germany. So I did an internship in Germany at the derivatives part of the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, as well as studying. So I studied in both Ingolstadt as well as lived in Frankfurt from the derivatives part. So came back to Memphis. So I laughed in a lot of ways. I came home to Memphis from Knoxville, and coming home actually took me further away from a global perspective. And when I came back, it was really one of those challenging times from a government type perspective, and where we were and where unemployment rate was, and really nobody was hiring except for the government. I got a job with Booz Allen Hamilton as a consultant for the U.S. Navy, doing compensation and retention strategies there. Then Obama started looking more towards government service, and I loved my time at Booz. Great experience working with the Navy, would have stayed on there, but was really going away from the contractor model and going towards more of a government service model. And when I've gone to different companies and I've worked in different places, I want to believe in the company that I work for. And so what led me to FedEx was I'm normally a very, very detailed person. And when I was 16 years old, I had I traveled abroad. I had gone to Costa Rica, had my passport for the first time. My passport expired when I was 26 years old, when I was getting married. And I realized, oh my gosh, my passport had expired, and I was about to get married and about to go on a honeymoon. And I was that person that literally ran out there and hugged my courier as he showed up with my passport in time for me to save both my, to save my honeymoon and stuff. And so when I looked at it from a company perspective, I believe in what FedEx does and what FedEx offers. And so from that perspective, it's one that I wanted to work for a company that I really knew the value of it, whether it was, getting medications or, saving somebody's, honeymoon with a passport. And so I started looking at different opportunities and found my way to FedEx. So I've worked at a number of different places within FedEx, and my resume on paper doesn't make a bit of sense, where I've gone from digital access marketing to global planning and engineering to information technology, and then finding my way home on the HR side doing compensation. So if you look at my resume, you would go, how in the world has this person literally gone from all these different things? And while it doesn't make sense when I say it, like if you followed my career, you could see the different experiences that I've had in each of those different roles and how they've led me and they've prepared me for that next role. So I found my way. I've been in this role for a couple of years now. Met Kathy early on in this role when I attended my first compensation conference in this role, and so it's been a wild ride. So I love FedEx, global company. Started in 1971 by Fred Smith. 450,000 total team members across all of the different operating companies. So FedEx Express, as it's on its own, is $36 billion. We're a $60 billion company. I manage, roughly 115,000 people's salaries, as well as leave of absence, as well as relocation, as well as global mobility. So our expat program, tuition reimbursement, service awards. So my team manages a multitude of different things. And I've got about a team of about 70 people that report to me. So yeah, that's kind of a long, short overview of me.
I love it. I think what I connected to was your eclectic background. I think, my having mostly been in a smaller organization all my career, I was used to like wearing a lot of different hats and different parts of and segments of my career. So I really connected to how many different things that you did. And I think we found a lot of common ground because we had, so many different experiences in our career paths, and it just broadened our view of business so we could think beyond, the role that we have, because we had, touched many aspects of an operating system within a business. So really, really cool story. And I love, just how it kind of parlayed into this role today. And, incredible amount of responsibility, and we know people like to be paid. So, you know, you do have a high impact on the employees at FedEx Express. So, tell me a bit about how things have gone. So since we saw each other, you know, back not almost a year ago in Minneapolis, and there's been a lot of changes since we last saw each other. So what's going on at FedEx?
So FedEx, I mean, as a global company, coronavirus and everything that's happened in the world today started hitting us early. So when you have operations over in Hong Kong, in China, I mean, when you have operations over there, we were starting to feel the effects of this before it ever came to the United States. And so it's been, I mean, it was a little bit of a rocky road there for a little bit, right? You know, with, you know, planes and packages, and we were one of the only companies that was flying in and out of China for a period of time, and where, you know, other people weren't willing to. And so I think for me, it's one of those things that, like, the sense of pride of how FedEx has really weathered all of this is like foundational to where it is, right? I mean, it's just, you know, when you think of FedEx, and, you know, I love it when you acronym something, right? Like I Googled it, you know, it's one of those when you FedEx it, right? And, you know, when it becomes an acronym, and, you know, you think about, you know, how it is with everybody at home today, with so many people at home today and not being in the office, that people, you know, there's a number of people that are so afraid to get out. They're so afraid to, you know, to go into stores, that our volumes have gone absolutely crazy, right? Because it's one of those things that there are more and more people are at home, and they're shipping it. And I'm sure that anybody who's listening to this is, I'm sure, had number of different packages that have been shipped to them over the last, you know, 4 to 6 months as this crisis has continued. So, I mean, FedEx has done a number of things, from anything from, you know, providing the personal, like really shipping out those personal protective equipment, to really getting those test kits out. And so, I mean, you know, in my world, you know, from a FedEx perspective, a ton has changed, right? Like we have 90,000+ employees at FedEx Express that have to show up every day in order for the network to run. And I mean, imagine how trade and industry would change if we weren't running our shipping network. And so it's one of those things that we're essential, and we're showing up. And while I'm in an HR and a support function, I'm in and out some within the office. Most of the time I'm spending my time at home. But, you know, a lot of my challenges have been, you know, a lot of those, the things that we look at is like the unemployment rate. And we've got over 600 locations across the country. And so there's a lot of different needs across the country and what we're looking at. And so, I mean, we went from unprecedented times of unemployment rate at unprecedented lows to unprecedented highs to government stimulus checks. So there's a lot of things and a lot of different dynamics in play that are impacting our world and forcing us to, you know, look at things very differently on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it is incredible in such a short lifespan of, you know, just February, maybe early March, those low unemployment rates, and now where we're at today, that was just like two ends of the spectrum in a, you know, really, really quick time frame. So from an unemployment standpoint, are you finding hiring being easier, since, you know, now that I'm sure there's different protocols you're having to put in place around your hiring strategies just to operate with more video or technology in that process?
So one of the things that, I mean, is interesting is that more and more companies are being forced to lay off employees because of, you know, where the business and the state of their business is. And with FedEx, we're hiring more and more employees, right? Because of the volumes that we're seeing. And so, I mean, there are people out there. One of the challenges is the government stimulus checks. And when you start thinking about the hourly employees, and some of the challenges there is that people are receiving money and just by sitting at home and not having to work. And so some of those folks are just choosing to sit at home and not to come in and work. And so it's one of those that our need for employees is great, you know, at this point in time because of the way that our volumes are. So, I mean, we're consistently looking, I mean, we're consistently hiring. And so while you would think that there's tons of people out there, you know, some of the people aren't necessarily willing to come into work and actually work, and they just want to get paid for sitting on the couch.
Yeah, it's been, I think that's even smaller employers that are hiring, a smaller workforce. We're seeing that really have an impact in the manufacturing community here in Illinois. So it's a big, challenge that hasn't really changed, even with, technically a sector of the workforce that is now available that wasn't really available last year or earlier this year. So we referenced this Harvard Business Review article about recessionary times and where people either invest or their offensive versus defensive approaches. Can you speak to what have you guys done as an organization? What are you investing in, and what have you done anything in order to reduce costs? What are some of the strategies that your organization's employed?
So first of all, we're not reducing our number of employees. If anything, we're actually growing our employee base. So, I mean, we haven't stopped hiring. So in terms of defensively, like trying to protect our employees, I mean, a lot of that in our business is really trying to protect our employees. So at FedEx, it's people, service, profit, and people come first. And so, a lot of our different taglines are safety above all, safety first, safety is everyone's responsibility. And so there's a number of different things in this crisis type time that, we've implemented, from temperature screening to actually paying for and setting up free COVID testing sites across, a number of different cities across the country. And, the PPE and increased cleaning. And so from a defense type perspective, it's a lot of our defensive things that we've been doing is really trying to protect our people. Again, we have 90,000 people who have to show up for work each day. And so that's been a lot of it, is we've actually put costs in to ensuring that our team is protected. Other things that we're doing, though, is innovation and technology. So we're an extremely innovative company. So, we invented tracking back in 1978. And so, that was the start of it. We just recently had an announcement about a partnership with Microsoft. So we also just had an announcement about robotic arms going into the Memphis hub, into our small package store, facility. And so we're consistently looking at ways to innovate and to add technology into our network.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. That sort of additive cost on the protecting our workforce has really been, significant to even mid-market businesses. So I can only imagine on a global scale that type of buying need that's changed. So what would you say is one of the larger challenges? We talked about workforce. What else is on your mind right now in terms of how you think about operating?
I think agility. So I think is the biggest challenge right now. So as I mentioned, things change daily right now. And you think about how much has changed over the last couple of months, from like a 2% unemployment rate to an over 10% unemployment rate to government stimulus checks. And, are they going to, continue with the government stimulus checks, and, how that's going to work. And so, I think that there's a lot of variables in play that I feel like my team has, more and more has to be more and more agile. And, in terms of what's going on in the environment around us, and what we've done yesterday isn't going to necessarily work tomorrow. And so really looking at things differently and trying to figure out different ways to do things, and being able to react quickly when there's, executive mandates that come down, or anything that, that continues to happen. So, my team had jumped in, and we were working on temperature screening and getting temperature screening set up across the country. And that was before executive mandates had even gone down across multiple of those states. And so we were already getting, camera, the technology system in place with the camera system, with the thermal imaging and handheld scanners, and, and all of that in a number of these different locations. And so I think some of that is how do we anticipate some of this? And we were doing this because it was, how do we best protect our employees? And it was one of those that it doesn't necessarily mean that they have COVID, but they have something, and we don't necessarily want them walking in, whether it's COVID or whether it's the flu or whether it's something, anything like that. And so it's how do we stay ahead of it as best we can, and not just react to what's happening.
Yeah, I love it. I think that it's hard to imagine an organization of your size having the word agility be part of your culture, but it's just in the nature of what you do too. You have to be agile. There's just so many, like weather could be an impact on how, a certain day. So I think agility is where we're all at today. And just, thinking about that on a global scale, I don't think I'd sleep at night. But anyhow, you guys are real experts at that. So what are you feeling, really excited about? What is, brewing from an optimism standpoint at FedEx?
So I think for me, it's a sense of pride, right? From a FedEx perspective of what we do. So, I mean, it's so many people are housebound and not getting out, and to know that, FedEx is delivering, we deliver when many others weren't. And so I think that's, from an optimistic perspective, one, where the volumes have gone is fantastic to see. And the fact that we continue to deliver. But, for my team, it's one of those things that when I came into the organization, one of the things I challenged my team with is, they would come to me with different information, and, they would provide me that information. And one of the things I'd really push back to my team is, what do you think and what do you recommend based off of that information? And so I see that consistently with my team of, I've got all these amazingly smart people who are finding, all of this different information and are really working to be proactive and, seeing different things and seeing different trends and making recommendations. And so being more proactive in that decision making. So I think that for me, the optimism is that, I've got this great group around me who I feel like thinks so much differently and is really strategic in nature, and they're really looking for ways to be proactive in decision making and what's happening in the world, as opposed to just reacting to what's happening. So
that's really cool. And so, running a team as large as you're running, it's pretty interesting that you're able to get sort of that, like, kind of crowdsourced thinking and innovation in a larger group like that. So is there certain things that you guys do or tools that you're using to share thoughts or have strategy or brainstorm sessions? Can you share a little bit more about
how?
So
I mean, Office 365 has helped a ton. And it's one of those that I always make I think I had read a comic, and it was kind of funny is, what has led your company, what's moved your technology forward within your company? Was it your CIO, your CTO, or was it COVID? And, while I feel like our IT department has done a number of things to move technology forward, they very quickly had to react to what happened. And when you think of FedEx on the scale that we are, they very quickly had to react for hundreds of thousands of employees across the world to figure out how to best support, that workforce. And it really very quickly, almost overnight, like our packages go, that they were able to really give us the technology that we needed to be successful. And so I personally miss it. Like, I've got, dry erase boards and conference rooms and stuff. And I miss getting that group together and that brainstorming sessions and that thought, where I'd throw something on a wall and I'm like, tell me I'm wrong. And my team's, throwing stuff up there and, doing different things, because that's the type of an environment that I want. I want that type of an organizational climate and that environment where, just because, I've got 70 people that report in my organization, they have a voice and they're there for a reason, right? Like, that they actually bring a whole lot of different perspectives, from different areas and their experience. And so I miss the whiteboard aspect of it. And so I love, with Office 365, with Microsoft Teams, and doing different things, I feel like technology has enabled us to see each other. And I feel like even a lot of the people that I didn't necessarily see that worked remotely or worked globally, that I've gotten to actually connect with better over that period of time.
Yeah, it definitely has. I think even, for us, we're spending a lot more time on video conferences, but I do feel like we're together more in a really strange way. And we're, kind of learning more about the personal side of people, because some of us are working from home, and so there's a dog that runs through your house, or a crying child in the background. And it's a strange way of humanizing the work experience. Do you feel like, I kind of want to just, I love that sense of pride. I know, that's something that we also connected on is that FedEx is the cool brand. And I love that sense of passion and pride. Do you feel like there's been sort of a resurgence around some of these unique conditions are you feeling that throughout the team? Are you seeing that in your team members and workforce as well?
Yeah, I mean, so we have a lot of it, like, the Stay Strong and FedEx Strong type sites that, people are posting. And to me, it's amazing. One of the things that my team manages is this Purple Promise and Humanitarian Awards. And so when you see these amazing stories of FedEx couriers and, them like saving someone's life and, like my team reads all of those. And so it's one of those things that I feel like I'm inspired a lot. Just, very consistently, it's just about how amazing so many of our people are and what they do. And there's, in any company, there's always going to be a bad apple. And I'm sure that anybody could, have one story about one person, but there's hundreds of thousands of amazing people that go above and beyond on a daily basis. And so I see those things a lot of times, but not not everybody sees that. And so I think that there's been more of those that messaging out there of a lot of those type, we've got our masks and stuff and it says FedEx Strong. And, it's those types of, where you really see that sense of pride and, where I'm proud of it, as a back office type worker, but really seeing from a frontline perspective, what they're doing and some of the videos that they've created. And I mean, it's like, it gives me chills. Like, it's pretty incredible to see how they've really come together and that it's all about, how do we deliver and how do we help people?
Sometimes you're the only, your couriers are the only people somebody's seeing. They've been so, isolated. They're, looking through their glass door window at the FedEx and just having that human connection has been pretty pivotal in this current economy. So let's, kind of circle back to you a little bit. You talked about your career, but what has, been your experience? What have you learned about yourself, your leadership skills? What has this changed you? Has this taught you anything?
Well, like I was talking about the organizational climate, I think that's the hardest thing for me, right? Is I've always loved being around people. So I'm clearly a people person. I love the people. I love the connection. I love that interaction. I love creating a sense of, where my team can come in and really be engaged and really be part of it. And so I think that that's been the hardest thing for me is like, how do I even adjust in that, right? So I love the connection to people and I don't have that. So I've looked for other ways, to have that, right? And so for a period of time, so many things were shut down and this about me, but, I love tennis. And, when the courts were shut down, it was one of those things of that was my outlet outside of work. And I think one of the biggest challenges for me is, while I'm in the office I'm primarily at home. And when I'm at home, like home is everything. And so I'm a millennial, so I'm at the older scale of the millennial range. And I've never felt like you actually had to physically be in the office to do your job, but I still felt like I got to get away from the office. And so the thing for me has been one of those of like the biggest challenges that I don't ever get away. We live purposely like 25, 30 minutes away from the office. Both my husband and I, we go in separate directions to, different businesses in Memphis. But I feel like, that drive home, even though I get calls and even though I'll check emails and I've got I had before all of this, an entire work set up at home that I could log back into. Not every night did I have to log back into it, and not every day did I spend 100% there. And so, I've had moments where I'm like, even when I'm taking days off, I'm like, I don't feel like I'm getting away. And we've got this great oasis in our backyard that I should feel like I get away, but I don't feel like I get away. Like I feel like I am still at work. And so I've kind of consciously, some of the times gone into work so that I feel like when I leave work, I physically get away. And I think that that's been that biggest thing for me is that mental shift of work and home are the same thing all the time now. And I've got 2 little kids. And so that's created other little challenges, of, you know, and both of us are full-time working parents. And so, you know, how do you do it all and balance it all when you've got 2 children there, and work is home. So, I mean, I think that that's been the biggest thing is how do I still connect with people? And then how do I make sure that I disconnect at times when I am 100% connected? I mean, we have, you know, these amazing little devices that we walk around with that can do anything and everything. And we get messages and phone calls and emails on them, you know, 100% of the time. And I think that that's the biggest challenge is how, you know, for me, is how do I still separate that between, you know, work and home and actually have that balance.
Well, it's hard. I think we all are facing that same dilemma. You clearly love what you do, and you clearly love your kids, because I've heard you talk about them a lot, and your husband and your tennis game. So, but it is hard. It is hard when there's no, you know, real divide. I find myself struggling a lot with that. And that is some of the reason I do go back in the office, is that I just need, you know, I need that break. Because if I don't, you know, go in the office, I tend to find myself, you know, working from 5 or 5:30 a.m. in the morning, and then it's like 6:30 at night, and I haven't really left my desk, and it's not sustainable and not healthy at all. So, so talking about, you know, that, what are some of the habits that you've been, you know, like that have come out of trying to navigate a healthier, harmonious work life?
So I think that, you know, one of that is prioritizing wellness for me. So I've made it a point, and, you know, a lot of times, like you know, playing tennis at 7:30 at night, right? So I've made it a point to at least get in the exercise, and I'll look down and I'm like, man, I've walked 800 steps total, and it's 6:30 in the afternoon. I mean, it's one of those things. The kitchen is not very far away, and there's, you know, and it's right there. And so it's, you know, from a wellness perspective, I'm trying to get up more. I actually kind of love the fact that the Apple Watch will, you know, give you a reminder of like, it's time to get up, and you're realizing like, I've just been sitting here all day. And so prioritizing wellness, and prioritizing the ability to get away for just a little bit, so that, you know, one, to clear your mind. You've got to turn off at some point. And so I think that's part of it. And then even with my team, I've done things differently. So from like a one-on-one perspective, I created this template that I really wanted to focus on our specific conversations. And I wanted to make sure that we used that time on what decisions they needed, anything, you know, any good news stories and things to celebrate. You know, what are they working on? You know, what do they need help from me on? You know, what items do they have due to me? That type of thing, that we could really focus that conversation on, you know, hey, here's some great things that are going on. And here's the things that I've got due to you, and this is where I am on them. You know, here's a couple of decisions that I need from you. And it's really focusing that conversation, and they send it to me in advance, and I get a chance to start reading it. And so if I've got something that I need to do for them, or they need support from me that I've already gotten, and a lot of times by the time we talk, I've already started taking action on one of the things that they need from me. And so I've really tried to figure out ways to have that conversation and to work with my team a little bit differently, especially in an environment like this where they're not just seeing me and they can't just, you know, tap me on the shoulder and remind me of, hey, can you do this, and can you help me out with this?
Yeah, I love that. I think, you know, we had gone to a similar format in our one-on-ones, and what I love is that I can look, you know, even now we've got it more in this format that I can see how, you know, where we rate how we're feeling about things. So I can see if somebody has been consistently, you know, trending in a negative way, or they're always, you know, feeling pretty good. And it's really valuable to have both, you know, that ongoing communication structure, and really understanding both the, you know, what's happening with work and how are you, I think especially now, how are you doing personally? You know, what are you struggling? Do you have young kids that you're trying to navigate those experiences? So I love that structure, and it's good to be able to have that historical, you know, look back on all those different details of the one-on-ones. So, in your external network, you talked about tennis, but what are some of the other, who else have you been leaning on sort of for support in these last few months?
Well, my husband primarily. One, we're both at home, and there was different points in time where I was sitting. There were times where I sat, I tried to sit across from him. I'm like, this is amazing. I actually get to see my husband throughout the day. And so I would try to sit down at the kitchen table across from him, and then we both realized that both of us get way too many calls throughout the day, that I found myself kind of in more of the office, and he would stay out there. And so, he's been unbelievable in terms of, one, working and then trying to help take care of the kids, and, where I'm, kind of doing it on the side, and he's doing it more full-time. I'm kind of the part-time, more in the office, and he's really kind of handling more of that. So I would say my husband is who I primarily leaned on the most, but my team is as well. So I've got 7 managers who work for me. They're absolutely amazing. And they've done an amazing job of handling this and really working with their teams. And even when I have skip levels with their employees, it's one of those of, you consistently hear, just how engaged they are and making sure that, and they're checking in with the team and they're really working with them, and they've really adapted well with it. And so I've leaned heavily on, my peers, my managers, but most importantly, my husband, and then my parents. So my parents were were a little bit uncomfortable at first, especially with everything that was going on with COVID. But I couldn't do what I do today if I didn't have my parents. And then my mother-in-law has been great too, of coming over and kind of playing with the kids and taking care of them, or, sitting outside while they swing on the swings and that type of stuff. But my parents will take them whenever they can, and really, give them that undivided attention that I feel like they're missing so much of, because they do have 2 working parents who are trying to, while we're at home with them, we can't just sit there and play games with them and, work with them on stuff all day.
Yeah, it's been a huge adjustment, I think, because if you technically think that your parents go to work away from the home and all of a sudden they're at home, you're just expecting that they're available to you. I worked from home for 5 years when my kids were younger, and I hated 3 o'clock because they would they didn't care what was going on. They'd bust in and they needed, X, Y, or Z. It just had to happen. They knew I worked from home, but it never mattered. They wanted that immediate attention. So I cannot, I can't imagine when it's like day, one day you're working at an office with school and all these things that is your normal life. And then the next day, okay, navigate that everything that you used to know is changed in a 24-hour period. It's been a special circumstance, I think, for working parents with younger children. So Lisa, I think we're, getting close to sort of Q&A time. I know you had a poll, or do you want to start to entertain some of the Q&A?
I'd love for anybody who does have a question, love to hear that. But in the meantime, what we're going to do is put a poll up. So one of the things Emily's really talked about is agility, how, in a matter of 24 hours, sometimes we're pivoting. What happened yesterday isn't going to work for tomorrow. So I'm going to throw a poll up on the screen just to see, get some audience engagement here. How well do you feel your company, or if you're a sole proprietor, how well do you feel you did in pivoting to keep up with these ever-changing conditions this year? So we'll give everyone just a moment here to answer the question. So far, so good. One more response here, and as Kathy is joking, I have a barking dog, so I think, again, the joys of working from home. All right, and well, as we can see here, it looks overall for those that responded, looks like amazing. So glad to hear that you were able to kind of jump in and roll with the punches, if you will. So we're still moving. I'm going to take that glass half full and be able to think that through. So I think this has been a really unique year. Obviously, Emily, as you have spoken, FedEx Express also had that same exact thought. So I think as we look to the last half of the year, as I look for other questions to come in, Is there anything you're really excited about as you look to kind of closing out 2020? Is there any momentum that you guys have seen that you've gained that's really going to benefit you as you move into your planning for next year?
Wow, that's a tough one. I mean, I think it's one of those things, like I said, that it's great to see, the volumes, the e-commerce volume and everything that's going on there. And so, I mean, it's one of those things that our volume is fantastic, right? So, I mean, packages in the network. And so, I mean, outside of that, I mean, I think it's just one of those things that when I talk about, from an agility perspective and that problem solving and really looking at things differently, I feel like that just transcends beyond it, that the team has really done a great job of adapting to it. And so going forward, it's one of those that, like, that's what I get excited about, is that they've really adapted so well to it, and they're really problem solving, and they're really looking at it differently, that I think it continues on.
Is there anything that you guys are doing in the hiring process that's different? Have you found any, with so many open roles? I thought I saw on LinkedIn you have like 35,000 available jobs in the U.S., which is you're one of the top hiring companies right now. So is there anything you're doing differently in the hiring process?
Yeah, so I think, one of the things is they've really kind of modernized the process and have streamlined it a little bit more to try to get people in more quickly. And so, making it where, once the person puts in their application, typically it would take a couple of weeks to get somebody hired, and really trying to shorten that window and figuring out exactly what we need to do and kind of speeding up that process.
Was that something that you had been like thinking about, or like it was on like a development roadmap and it really just the right timing? Yeah, that's great. Because I know it's automation and technology has just been a shift for so many organizations. So, where can you, improve or shorten that time in from application to hire is completely more effective when you've got some technology in play.
And the team was already looking at a lot of that beforehand, just from the fact of where unemployment rate was, is that it was extremely competitive to try to get people in. And so it's one of those that you can't afford to lose somebody in the hiring process in terms of them waiting on actually being hired.
Yeah, that ghosting situation goes both ways for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, actually, speaking of technology, is there anything, Emily, knowing you have such a big team, I mean, you just mentioned you have 7 managers, up to 70 plus employees. Is there any communication strategies that you found really effective to keep in touch with your team, especially if things were changing by the hour? So anything you guys were doing that was working well, or anything that you guys found that was, wow, this was a really great silver lining to all of this?
Like I said, I mean, we've really used like Office 365 and Microsoft Teams, one for like small meetings, but then it's also just to kind of keep those documents out there and keep up to date, and so that other people could use it. Because a lot of people, when you're in the office, they would just save it to their desktop, and so now really putting it on a OneDrive and having that be shareable, I think people are kind of changing, so it's not just on their desktop, because they could go to the neighbor next to them and say, hey, do you have this? And so now it's really putting it out there so that other people can access it as well.
Yeah, we use Google Drive in that very same way. It's just way more effective to be able to access something digitally and share and comment versus that paper trail. So.
Well, I'd say thank you to everyone for sending in the questions today. If you do think of something for Emily after today's webinar, would like to get in touch with her, you can go ahead and email her at emily.brown@fedex.com. Just put unusual in the subject line so she knows you're coming from the webinar. Or you can also look for Emily on LinkedIn as well. So Emily, thank you so much for being our guest today. It was great getting to hear from you and all of your amazing experiences over the last few months, and how you guys are really, I would say, just clicking along, for lack of a better word.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks, Kathy.
Thanks, Emily.
So as we look ahead, as Emily was talking about agility, we're actually going to deep dive on agility during our August 13th session featuring Marty Constant. She's a workplace futurist and best-selling author of a book she recently published, which is called Activate Your Agile Career. So Marty has done a lot of field research, has worked with several Silicon Valley companies, has been a consultant, and really has dove into this to figure out why agility and being either, steadfast or being very kind of active and flexible has really helped certain businesses survive and thrive. And as I'm thinking of it now, recently looking at so many bankruptcy filings of stalwart businesses such as Neiman Marcus, looking at GNC, companies that have been around for years, and then seeing those that are now surging, such as Zoom, Amazon, Teladoc, Domino's even. There's that defining factor to all of those businesses, which is the agility factor. So Marty will be sharing more with us on August 13th from all of her research and how you can look to your company to hire for agility, look at what we're terming as the now normal, and what you can do to bring that agility into prototyping and experimenting to help your business continue to be one that succeeds. So you can sign up for that on our website, redcaffeine.com. And we'll also have information in Emily's recap email as well as an announcement later next week. So thanks for joining us. If this was your first Business as Unusual webinar, I hope you enjoyed today's session. If you have any questions about Red Caffeine or are interested in learning more about how we can help you with your grow to market strategy, you can reach out to us at connect@red-caffeine.com.